Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to see this many people here today. I am Kim Cook Thompson, and I am the chair of Oklahomans for the Arts. We are the the advocacy organization for all arts organizations and artists in the state of Oklahoma. We've been around since 2011. Our mission is to protect and increase public funding for the arts and arts education in Oklahoma and to promote policies that support the arts through advocacy, education, and engagement. We are a nonpartisan group. We do not advocate for candidates. We advocate mainly for policy and for funding. We are statewide nonprofit, so our support comes through grants and donors and membership dues from organizations and people like you. And our members do include artists and policymakers, educators, art organizations, and art appreciators. So thank you again. This is our kickoff meeting, if you will. We plan to have more of these meetings throughout the year and the upcoming session to keep you informed. But to talk about that, I'm going to let Danielle Ezell, our new interim director, talk to you about that. But first, I'm going to give you a little bit of her background. She is a multifaceted strategist and master problem solver known for her broad expertise in business-to-business marketing, public relations, and strategic communications. Starting her career in marketing, Danielle established an award-winning strategic communications firm that served a wide range of clients, including startups and federal agencies. Her career trajectory took a significant turn in 2008 when she joined Teleflora, initially leading the technology marketing team and eventually rising to vice president of administration. In this capacity, she spearheaded human resources, technology marketing initiatives, and critical operational projects. She holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Public Relations from Syracuse University and an MBA from Oklahoma City University. She's a certified senior professional in human resources and has accreditation in public relations, credentials that highlight her deep understanding of both strategic and operational aspects of business. She is currently a partner at Matisse, which is a business consulting agency providing solutions for growth stage businesses that are ready to break through to the next level. So please help me welcome Danielle Ezell.
Thanks so much, Kim. As you can tell from my bio, I have commitment issues. I've done a lot of different things in my career, but probably my all-time favorite and is what I'm doing today, which is advocacy work and it's something that I am extremely passionate about. I love the strategy and the thought and being able to impact change in our state. So I'm so glad that all of you have joined us today. We have several of our board members and partners on the call, as well as arts advocates and partner organizations. So thank you all for being here. So just a quick recap on OFTA and our advocacy efforts and where we focus, because I know it can be confusing in the state about who is doing what. So our focus is on appropriations and funding. We are advocates for the Oklahoma Arts Council's appropriations and budget, funds from the NEA and NEH, which we've all been thinking about in the last 24 hours, and we have an update, a positive update there. We are focused on arts education and access for our students in Oklahoma to find arts classes, dance and music classes, as well as looking at graduation requirements. Business and tax policy that impact arts and culture organizations, as well as artists, things like tax credits, deductions for charitable giving, which is on the radar this year again, artist business deductions, and legislative and taxation events. Other areas that we've worked on, Kim was highly involved in this last year, as well as our lobbyist, Jared Schaus, working with Amber Sharples at the Arts Council, but our ARPA funding, which was a huge win last year. Legislation that involves public art, historic preservation, artificial intelligence, a new area for us to be focused on, and our cultural districts, which are so important from an economic standpoint for our state and placemaking. So that's an example of the areas. Those are the areas that when we're looking at legislation at the Capitol, that we are focused on, that you might see off to take a lead on. That doesn't mean that we don't care about other issues, but these are the ones that we are going to be strategically focused on and taking the lead on. Now, when we introduced this, when we introduced this webinar today, our focus was going to really be on Advocacy 101 and what happens here in Oklahoma, what bills we're tracking, how the process works, and really how to get involved as advocates. But of course, in the last 24 hours, it's been a bit chaotic. So I did add in a little bit of information on the federal level, which I know many of you are passionate about and very concerned about after the executive order on Monday night freezing grant funding. For those of you who haven't heard, strap in because the news has changed again, but about 12:15 today, the Office of Management and Budget rescinded the memo that would have frozen funds. So that is a huge win, an exciting moment that advocates came together yesterday, as well as the legal community and the nonprofit community, and really were able to turn the tide on that very quickly. Some things, though, I did have this in here before things changed earlier today. I just want you to remember and be aware, for those of you that weren't sure yesterday how this might impact you. NEA funds, so the National Endowment for the Arts, provides funds directly to the state through the Oklahoma Arts Council, and that's about 20% of the Arts Council's budget. So that's what we would have been looking at yesterday of possible frozen grants. About 20% of the Arts Council's budget, impacting about 200 organizations. Those were all funds that come to the state and then are granted right back out to you. So that would have been the impact, and the funds impacted. We also regionally, through the Mid-America Arts Council, some of those NEA funds also come into the state. So thankfully, things are fine. In talking to the Arts Council yesterday and Amber, her advice to you for me to share is please, 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 if you do have one of these grants, these federal NEA grants through the Arts Council, keep on top of your grant reporting. Keep those reports coming in a very timely basis with great documentation, because we want to make sure that they are able to turn those quickly. So in the case of a threat of any future freezes, they've got your information. It's a lot harder to rescind funds that haven't already been allocated. So making sure that you're on top of those reports is really critical. Another resource that I will get the link out to you that was widely shared yesterday was a document from the Council for Nonprofits. They have put together a really excellent list of all the executive orders and the current actions and status of each of them and who might be impacted. So if this is an area where you start worrying about, is your organization impacted, or the grant that you've received, or other executive orders that you hear about, this is a good resource for you. So my reminders to you, especially on the federal, is to don't panic. Some people had questions yesterday about their state ARPA funds, but those would not have been impacted. Just a quick update on those: 38% of the funds that were awarded last year have been dispersed at this point. And again, please get your documentation in as quickly as you can. They are going through multiple levels of review at the state, so those disbursements are taking some time, but just get everything turned in so there's no issues. And my personal reminder, having worked in politics for a long time, and I know it's hard, but control what you can control. For me, that means focusing on a state level. And what can I do to influence change here? It's a lot easier for all of us to reach out and talk to our elected officials here and influence change than we can at the federal level. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And that's my personal survival technique, is I'm going to focus on what I can change and influence here in Oklahoma. So with that, let's look at what we are looking at in the months to come here in Oklahoma. This is the 60th legislature that will convene. They start on next Monday, a week from this past Monday. And then they go through the end of May to the last Friday in May. This is the first year of a two-cycle session, which can be really confusing. So bills that are introduced in this session can be heard this year or next year if they don't die. So when you hear that this is the first of 2 years. After that, the slate is wiped clean and every bill starts again. And in this year, in December and January, about 3,000 bills were filed. So an incredible number of bills. That was 1,928 House bills and about 1,100 Senate bills. So in recent weeks, I have been, and Jared and everybody else in the state who works in advocacy has had the pleasure of reading those 3,000 bills to try and find out and mark which ones we need to be watching. And I'm going to share some of those with you today, but rest assured, even if you don't see a bill in this presentation, we have a much wider list of bills that we are tracking and making sure that we keep our eye on during session. So this is a great flow chart. You can download this presentation after this. We'll get you a link as well as provide the recording. This is a 2-page flow chart that if you're a geek like me, you will love to print and put up. My first couple sessions that I worked, I had one of these up on my wall to figure out where a bill was and how it works. So I'm going to go through this at a very high level. Some of you on the call know this. You know, if you've worked in this area, there's a lot more to this and a few other lines that could be coming off this flow chart. So this is an overview. But right now, the bills next week will be in first reading. So that is when they are officially entered into the process. From there, they go to second reading, and then they are assigned to committees. So every bill has multiple steps that it has to go through to become a law. And each bill is assigned to a committee that will hear the bill first. And those committee assignments are important because that's, as advocates, our first chance to influence change. So that's a critical first step. And those committee assignments will probably come out towards the end of next week, the week after, where we'll know the bills that we're tracking, which committees are going to hear them, in which elected officials are going to have a chance to vote yes or no on it. So in order for a bill to become a law, though, it has to be heard and get through each of these steps on this chart. And so after it gets assigned to a committee, we're anxiously awaiting to see if it will show up on that committee's agenda and be heard. And sometimes that doesn't happen until right at the last minute. And so when that happens, if the bill is actually going to be heard, if it's going to have a chance to become a law, they'll publish it on the agenda, depending on whether it's the Senate or the chamber. There's different rules about how far out they have to get it onto the agenda. But we'll see it vary all of a sudden sometimes, and you'll see a really fast alert coming out from us, letting you know that that bill is going to be heard possibly within 2 days in the hearing. If a bill isn't heard in committee, it can be dead. It can go away. And so that's the first critical step, is to be heard in the committee where the bill originated. So in the House, there's House committees, and in the Senate, there's Senate committees. From there, if the bill is heard, it goes back into the full chamber for a vote. And again, if it's voted down there, it's dead. It's over and done with. If it's not heard, though, it's still alive and can be brought back up. So in this, and I'm sorry, I don't think I have a pointer here. Let me go back that I can use. But in this third reading and floor vote, that's when the bill advances off the House or Senate floor. And then it actually starts the process all over again. So it then goes into the opposite chamber for first and second reading. Once again, has to go into a committee hearing, if passed, goes into that opposite chamber for a vote, and then hopefully, if passed, onto the governor's desk to be signed. At any point, though, the bill can fail and basically be killed off. I am an avid pottery enthusiast. I've started throwing pottery, and I liken this to throwing pottery, that even if you think things are going well, your piece can blow up midway through. Things can go wrong at any point in this process, even when you think you're good. So it's a long and complicated process with a lot of other nuances. One of the nuances is if the language is different between the two chambers, there is a process, and I'm not going to go into detail, where you have to get the language the same and voted on and agreed upon by both chambers in order for that bill to become a law. And that can become very convoluted. And there's these things called conference committees right at the end of the process, where elected officials from both parties will finally agree on the language of the bill. So at any point, a bill maybe that you have been supporting, language can change, and all of a sudden you'll see that we no longer support it because something's been added that we're not happy with, or a bill that wasn't on our radar at all may become on our radar to support and oppose, because language can get introduced at any point in the process. So it seems a little squirrely sometimes about, wait, I thought we were for that and now we're against it. And that's because things change so dynamically over session. So some of the deadlines, the Senate has published their deadlines, the House has not, but session begins next week. The first deadline for the Senate is March 6th, that all bills will be out of committee. You'll see a huge spike in the news cycle that week and attention of things going on. Then again, on March 27th is that first deadline to come out of the Chamber of Origin. April 24th out of the opposite chamber. March 8th for the third reading. So that's the really, March 8th is a super key deadline that is kind of the final rush into the end of the session of which bills are still going to be alive, and then adjournment on May 30th. So once the bill gets to the governor's desk, there's a few additional steps. The bill can be signed. He can opt to just take it and go ahead and sign it within 5 days if he's happy with it and the language. He can choose to kind of ignore it, in which case he doesn't have to sign it and it will become a law within 5 days when the legislature is in session. If we're not in session, so if it's after May 30th, he has 15 days to act and sign the bill. And he can veto it. And if he vetoes it, it can go back into each house, can override it with a 2/3 vote or a 3/4 vote. So again, just when you think things are good, you know, there can be a few additional glitches or hitches and obstacles to get the bill signed. Some terminology. Again, this is a great resource that we'll provide to you, but you'll hear a lot of terms that for a lot of us, we don't use every day, and some things to keep in mind. Bills can be signed to multiple committees. I didn't understand this the first year I worked up there, that my bill, I was like, yeah, I got out of committee. And then I found out, oh, it's going to another committee. So some bills will be dual assigned and have to go through 2 committees. That always happens with appropriations or money bills. A committee substitute, if you hear that term, that is when the words of what have been proposed for the bill are changed in the committee. Striking the title, this is how bills, you'll hear this when they're back into their chambers, that they have struck the title. And that means that there's a delay. There's a reason that they are holding that bill up, because it has to come back then. They'll end up having to rehear that bill and do more work on it. Floor substitute is like a committee substitute when language is added on the floor. Engrossed means the bill has passed the chamber. You'll see that on the legislative tracker, a terminology as engrossed. And then enrolled is when the bill is final and ready to go to the governor's desk. For OFTA, here are an example of 4 bills so far that we are tracking and supporting. There are many others that we are tracking at this point, but here are 4 that we know definitively we are supporting. The first is House Bill 1171, which creates a sales tax exemption for nonprofits here in our state. And there's some criteria that for those nonprofits on their size and other, that they're 501c3, et cetera. Senate Bill 44, which allows contractors and subcontractors who are working on contracts with exempt entities, such as nonprofits, would impact those contractors and subcontractors. So a very important bill for many of us. Senate Bill 162 creates funds to be used to collect and manage private donations. So whether or not donations are taxable, there's a bill like this also going on at the federal level that Senator Langford is very involved with. Senate Bill 289 creates a new exemption for museums operating on a budget under 1 million and adds exemptions for organizations supporting veterans. So those are 4 examples of bills we know we are supporting and tracking in the weeks to come. In addition to that, our agenda always includes our support for the Oklahoma Arts Council. The council has asked for 6.7 million, or only $1.46 per Oklahoman in their fiscal year 26 budget to be approved. That is an increase. We need that increase because our state's population is growing. Our costs have continued to increase with inflation. And of course, it's critical if those 20% NEA funds are at risk, that we are advocating and maintaining our state funds, which is 80% of the budget. And of course, as all of you know and live every day, investing in our arts and culture sector in Oklahoma is a great investment. It's an investment in our education and workforce, our quality of life, economic development, health and wellness, and it preserves our culture here in Oklahoma. So all good reasons to support and to cite. So how can you get involved this session? One way to track bills are our free tracking programs. You can go to oklegislator.gov, go to the bottom of that page, scroll to the bottom, create an account, and there's resources there if you don't know who your elected official is to look up, but you can also put in bill numbers and track them, and that will send you alerts. So that's a great free resource. Other helpful advocacy tools, that first one is an app you can download. This is a great way to see who is serving on what committees. If we send out an alert, we'll always include who you should contact and which committee they're on, but this is a way for you to look up elected officials or contact information. It's a must if you're up at the Capitol to download it and use. I just talked about the middle one, which is the state website. And then of course, the OFTA website. We will always post advocacy alerts there, and that's where you can sign up for our events and other alerts. Ways to get involved, and I highly encourage you to do this. Signing up for OFTA email alerts, meeting with your elected officials and telling your story. Please, please, please take the time to visit with elected officials in your district and tell your personal story about why the arts are important to you and the impact they've had on you and your family and our community. Please take advocacy action when requested. We try and make it as easy as possible. We'll have our Arts and Culture Day on April 27th. So please join us at the Capitol that day. Of course, number 5 is vote. Please vote. We have municipal elections and school board elections coming up statewide in 2 weeks. And then consider joining OFTA. We appreciate your support. Your financial support as well as your advocacy efforts make a huge difference here in Oklahoma. So a couple save the date options here. We will be meeting during session monthly to give you updates on what bills we're following, opposing, and to share with you what we're hearing up at the Capitol. So I've got those days, and I varied the days of the week and the times to try and accommodate, we can't accommodate everybody's schedule. So I've moved them around throughout. And then again, Arts and Culture Day is April 27th at the Capitol. And I hope you can join us there. We've got a great lineup. Jared Schaus, our lobbyist, will speak. Amber Sharples will give us an update from the Arts Council. And former Representative Colin Welke has agreed to join us that morning to give us a overview about artificial intelligence, and as an arts and culture industry and artist, what we should be aware of with AI and possible legislation coming down the pike. So that should be a really interesting session. We'll be starting the morning about 8:30 with a breakfast, and then our speakers, as well as having tables in the rotunda for interested organizations and visiting elected officials that day. So with that, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Oklahoma Arts Council, Mid-America Arts Alliance, the Chickasaw Nation, the Kirkpatrick Family Fund, who are big supporters of OFTA and the arts in Oklahoma, and we appreciate them so much. And a little more contact information from us, and that was a very fast 28 minutes. I may have to lengthen our future calls so we have more time for questions.
Danielle, you do have some questions in the chat, specifically from Nicole Poole about how OFTA is tracking and responding to policy changes at the state and federal levels regarding the elimination of DEI initiatives, and what specific strategies are in place to advocate for inclusive arts funding and programming in Oklahoma. I don't know if we have time to talk about those today, and since the federal freeze was rescinded, which is great, but I do agree with some of the people in the chat that it's probably going to come back, and we would need to at least be prepared for with a statement, which I know that you had prepared.
That's right. I had prepared a statement, and then we opted not to, obviously, this
Release
morning
it. Right.
release it. I was going to mention, Nicole, thank you for your DEI question. We are formulating our strategy and message there. But we do anticipate next week. So don't be surprised or alarmed when you see it, that in the governor's state of the state, the governor releases his own version of his proposed budget for the state that may not be in alignment with what the Arts Council has requested. So we are anticipating and preparing to react to that. The governor would really like to see our income tax eliminated for residents. In order to do that, he's got to have cuts other places. So there's a possibility he will request a flat or cut budget for the Arts Council, which is not what they have requested. So look for some alerts there, but thankfully he isn't, he can request that. That doesn't mean that's what our elected officials will do. So that's when we turn to you and ask for your support to reach out to them, for them not to, in that case, follow his request, and hopefully instead grant the request that the council and has made.
Another question on from Brendan Hoover is, are we tracking House Bill 1771, which would sunset OETA? Or would
Yes.
remove OETA from sunset? We are tracking that one. Okay.
Yeah. We are tracking that, as well as any bill that is in the section of law regarding high school graduation requirements.
Because of the fine arts requirement bill.
Because of the fine arts requirement. And just to be aware, I mean, there's a lot of bills that we are tracking in hopes that no other language gets added that wasn't already published and proposed.
It is worth mentioning, I think, on this call, just so everybody knows, that Jared Schaus, the lobbyist for OFTA, was able to get language in the Oklahoma City Chamber's legislative agenda regarding arts education. And so I don't know if we can share that out, or maybe we can talk about it at the next meeting, but that was as a result of Jared talking with legislators, particularly the legislator that passed that law, who's now working at the chamber, and getting them to kind of understand the importance of arts education. And so that doesn't that doesn't make up for the fact that we've dropped the fine arts requirement, but it does give us a little bit of hope that perhaps it could get back reinstated at some point down the line.
And thank you, Jason. You're right. I did have the wrong date in there. Arts and Culture Day is April 27th. So, and Youth Arts Education Day is March 8th. So,